Is it currently semester?
See you later.
Teaching at the moment?
See you this afternoon. Yeah.
So you teach masters?
I'll look after it.
And PhD students?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you.
Let's see, no, thanks for all the work you did to
You've got a website?
if we could have a little...
You've got an email address as well. And what is your area of expertise?
What you do, you know, contribute a little bit.
I very much enjoyed time. I always like to spend more time speaking to academics.
Food,
So we should keep in contact via email. We're trying to develop some
Thank you
things
so much.
around human rights protection and a network for Asia Pacific, which would include
Hi, thank you so much for all. I have
to
to
share
put my
insights.
card.
I've got your email now, and I'll email you so you've got my email.
It's so much
So it's a
work.
pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because you had a card. Yes.
We did.
But you were so
We
sweet.
did.
How's
I
it going?
remember very well.
It's so funny. But it was true, yeah. So have you
Again.
It's great. Have you read the observations?
Oh, welcome.
Have you read
I'm
our
feeling okay.
You've done very well. I've been very impressed. I was saying to
Thank
my
you.
colleagues how impressed I am with the way you coordinate it. You have a very good grasp of what is happening.
Yeah, but this is normal.
提醒各位贵宾，我们记者会呢，大概再过2分钟之后就要正式开始了，有请各位贵宾就座。那另外呢，提醒您将手机转为震动或静音。非常谢谢您的配合。Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin in 2 minutes. Please take your seats right now and kindly turn your phones into vibration or silence mode. Thank you very much.
The big screen for translation here.
Good morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the press conference and presentation of concluding observations for the review meeting of the ROC's second report under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. 非常欢迎各位现场以及线上的贵宾呢，一同参与2022儿童权利公约第2次国家报告国际审查会议结论性意见发表记者会哦。And to begin, we'd like to firstly take this opportunity to thank all the members of the International Review Committee who have worked long hours to go through all the documents, to have meetings with the representatives of the National Human Rights Commission and also government agencies, legislature, NGOs. And later, they are going to present the concluding observations, which will be very, very important to whether or not Taiwan can take its children's rights to yet another level. 我们在这边呢，要首先感谢所有的国际审查委员哦，这个礼拜真的是非常的辛苦，审阅各式的资料啦，和我们的国家人权委员会、和政府机关、立法机关和 NGO 开会交流。那等一下呢，也会正式发表这一次的结论性意见。 在那之前，我们是先给所有的委员一个热烈的掌声。Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much. 接下来呢，我们记者会的一开始首先就有请行政院儿童及少年福利与权益推动小组召集人林万益政务委员为我们开场。Let's firstly invite 林万益 convener of the task force on promotion of the rights and welfare for children and youth, Minister without portfolio, Executive Yuan. 那我们不好意思，等一下最后会有 Q&A 的时间哦，我们可以把。
There will be the QA session at the end. Would you please leave your QA at the end of the press conference? Because Minister Lin is going to give his remarks. There will be QA session later on. Let's all respect the IRC members. IRC members will give their concluding observations. After the concluding observations are presented, you can raise your questions. Excuse me, our staff, would you please come help? Okay, Minister Lin stated that, okay, if you want to state your opinions, and would you please finish in 3 minutes?
都会有，好，请说。
好的，各位来参与本次简讯意见的各位伙伴，大家好。那我们是一群就是少这样。
This microphone is not working. This microphone is not working. So that interpreters can hear you. Okay. The reason why we're here on the stage is because Mr. Shen, during the Chapter 1 to 4 session, these government delegates talk about the cause of the death or the suicide, saying that without all the jumping off from the buildings, then the suicide rate is not that high. We think this is taking the fact out of the context. He talked about the means. He was not talking about the causes. We think he is not addressing to the root cause. And Professor Laura Lundy asked the questions on, well, structural reasons. For example, too much academic pressure and so on. So within 1 day, we collected some of the words and opinions for about 100 children. So, and we will present these. Hold on a second. Oh, no. I mean, later on, we will present our opinions. We're going to scatter these opinions of the children. It means that our opinions are just scattered around on the ground or the floor. Nobody pay attention to our opinions. And the government is not able to catch the falling children. We will have 3 suggestions. First of all, Ministry of Health and Welfare should respond to this issue, and we want the representative from the ministry to apologize. And Mr. Shen, the government delegate who said that, is not here, but what he said really hurt the children in Taiwan. We hope that he will organize a press conference to express his official apologies. So our slogan is these head of the department should apologize. He should apologize. And he also said that people shouldn't do barbecue, because if there's coal that used for barbecue, it becomes some leftover, then the coal will be used for suicide. So again, we call upon his apologies. We call upon the government to attach great importance to children's suicide. There should be consultations meetings. There should be systematic inquiry and investigation. I think the Control Yuan is conducting such an investigation. So there should be more meetings and more research. More meetings, more research and investigation. Okay, thank you all very much. Okay, you have 30 seconds, okay? And to all the IRC members, I am a senior high school and I am a committee member to the children rights group at the Executive Yuan. And thank you so much for asking about mental health in your concluding observations, many local children representatives had proposed some mental health related proposals. We hope that it will attract national attention, especially it is really important for children. So I would like to thank you. Thank you for giving us the time to stand here to say what we want. In the future, we hope that we can continue to work with the government and the NGOs. And I would like to invite Minister Lin or as members probably to give some feedback to what we just said. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
This is a level platform for everybody to raise their concerns and also to let everybody hear your voices. 谢谢，非常谢谢我们这个儿少的代表。
Thank you very much. The young generation for using this platform to voice your opinions. Later on, there will be Q&A session, and you can take opportunity of that time. Now, first of all, I would like to thank the 5 IRC members. 4 of them were here for the first review and provided us with valuable suggestions so that in different fields, in different departments, on different issues, the government has been working hard to generate results. Now, this time, the RC members have proposed some of their observations and recommendations. And on behalf of Premier Su, I would like to thank the RC members for working from Sunday all the way to now, especially when there is the jet lag and time zone difference. It's difficult to sleep in the morning, but they have to be really focused when they have a dialogue with you. And starting from the afternoon 2 days ago and yesterday, they took the inventory of the observations, and they work, I think, until 8 p.m. I received their concluding observations. I read through these opinions thoroughly, and I admire them for their work. Later on, during the Q&A, I think there will be more discussions. But now I would like to respond to what the children just said now. I think the RC members said something very important, that is to allow diverse participation in various meetings among the government. There should be diversity as well, diversity of the participants, meaning that there should be younger children who can participate, because this time RC members see older children, maybe teenagers who are 16 or 17. So younger children, children with disabilities, indigenous children, children from economically vulnerable families, they should all have the opportunity to participate. They can participate on issues not only on education, but urban planning, traffic, leisure, and so on. So we are asked to inject the spirits of CRC into all fields of discussions and to include children participation. So to respond to the young people who were on the stage just now, we will continue to work toward this direction, continue to encourage participation. So if you have experience of participation, you maybe can encourage younger children to participate. I think some children came to me, and I said to these children that please pass on your experience, because your participation is and will be very important. This is going to help Taiwan stay aligned with international standards. I will touch upon some other issues later. I think I want to give the floor to the RC members now. They also want to share with us what they have observed. Thank you very much.
Minister Lin Wanyi. And next, we would like to invite Professor Jacob Duok, Chairman of the International Review Committee, to also say a few words in the beginning of the press conference. 那接下来呢，我们有请国际审查委员会的主席也先为我们说几句话，掌声欢迎。Let's welcome him.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you again at the final session of the review of the second report of the government of Taiwan on the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It was again, because we were here before, it was again a kind of a vibrant series of sessions with a lot of input from the government. We were very pleased by the information that we received during our dialogue with the delegation of the government, which was impressive in terms of the range of topics that were covered, the various ministries present here. That was, well, it's the advantage of doing it in the country. We don't have that in Geneva, such a big delegation of all kinds of representatives of different ministries. So one of those advantages to do it in the country. All that resulted in this little thing. You can put it in your pocket. You can have it available every morning when you want to go to your office. Just check the section of health if you're working in health and see what you have to do today. So it's that particular simple document that is the result of our consultation with you as a government and the discussion we had and the exchange of information through the list of issues and your responses, the very active involvement of children as was confirmed this morning. We very much appreciate that active participation and the expression of your views, one of those basic rights of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And we certainly encourage you to do that, and not only today, but throughout the year when necessary, and meet with all relevant authorities at the national, local level to make your point, to encourage them, to support them in doing what is expected from them under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The concluding observations do express our appreciation for what the government has achieved, and that is quite impressive. The government is very serious about the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and undertook a variety of measures, both in legislation and in the policy development and implementation. And you will find that also in the concluding observations. Today, just by way of a brief kind of presentation, give you a feeling of what was and is, what was our discussion and concern, and what you find in the concluding observations. It is, of course, a document that should not be shelved next to a couple of other documents you have in your office. And it is a challenge for not only the government, but also for NGOs, for young people, for children. Use this document when you pursue a certain goal in improving the implementation of your rights. You can find some links in the document that you may use for your activities in implementation, in promoting the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We will now continue with, say, as I said, brief presentation, some of the key recommendations, and we will start with Dr. Vukovic.
The mic is on.
Mic is on. Oh, this is a new type of mic. Good morning, everyone, and it's a great pleasure to be with you. It was a great pleasure to work in Taiwan for the first time. For me, it's the first time, and I was really happy to have been given an opportunity to work with you. I will just go briefly through what was sort of my part of the concluding observations, and I was mostly in charge of general measures of implementation and what is called the infrastructure, and then on violence, but then violence is so overarching that we will all be touching on violence. So when I talk about general measures of implementation, it's in the beginning of our concluding observations. I actually talk about infrastructure, and this is if you want to have comfortable life in a nice house, you have to have a road that leads to that, you have to have good electricity, plumbing, you have to have a really comfortable house and everything so that you can really enjoy life in that house. And this is a kind of similar thing. If you want to have good exercise of the rights of the child, you have to have a good infrastructure. And therefore, we first looked into legislation, and we are very happy that so much has been done in adjusting the legislation, in harmonizing. We are suggesting, because we read the law on the protection of children and youth, and we believe that it should be revisited, and it should be a little bit different. So that's our first recommendation. Then we also had recommendations regarding the policies and strategies. We would still like to see a comprehensive strategy on the rights of the child in the country, because sectoral strategies are not always so useful unless you have a full strategy. Coordination we are very happy with, but we still believe that coordination should be stronger, more budgeted, well-staffed, so that it can not only coordinate work, but it can also maybe do monitoring, state monitoring all the time. Training and education, there is so much training going on, and we believe that you are on the right path, and you should continue like that. And you should just make sure that everybody is included in the trainings, but I'm certain, we are all certain that this is going to happen in the course of the next 5 years. Independent monitoring, we were very happy that the National Human Rights Commission was established. We are still concerned, and we raised that concern in our concluding observations, that it's not sufficient to cover the rights of the child in accordance with the General Command number 2. So we are proposing that you maybe think and talk, organize a dialogue, whether you're going to really enlarge and establish a special unit for children and have a visible child's rights ombudsman, or have a separate ombudsman for children. And there are a few more issues, like we also said something about international cooperation. We were happy about it. Yes, and I will finish with the last point, and this is access to justice and complaints mechanism, which is also a very structural issue, because there is a commendable number of complaints procedures for children who believe their rights have been violated in different systems, education, health, but still children actually came to us in many of their reports and in the discussions, and we actually learned that these complaint mechanisms are not working well, and actually children refrain from using them because they're also afraid that their privacy could be violated. So yes, in the concluding observations, we are also recommending that the government keeps improving these mechanisms, ensuring confidentiality and just proceedings. So we recommend that the complaints mechanism is placed in a broader picture of the child's access to justice and services. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vukovic. And the floor is for Laura Lundy to give a brief presentation on the topics that she has been covering in this particular review process.
Thank you, and this is on. Thank you very much. Again, I reiterate our thanks to government for the hard work and detail and way that you collaborated with us. It's much appreciated. To civil society and NGOs for the huge work that went into sending us the alternative reports, and especially to children and young people for their perspectives. I had the brief on the general principles and on education. I'm just going to say a few things. I want to start by really congratulating the government on the incredible work in terms of Article 12 and participation. It has really transformed since 2017. I mean, it's incredible the change from then. There's so much happening, and it was really wonderful to see that. I also commend you on the fact that you realize that this is a journey, and that, you know, that things need to get better. And as Minister Lynn said, one of those things is ensuring that we include a more diverse group of children and young people, especially children. So I won't say much more about that. The second thing is starting to think about the areas where you want to encourage children to participate. And I think that really means anything that affects their lives. So it's not just, I mean, it's obviously education and health, but it's everything. And that really takes me to my next point, which was one of the very significant areas when we looked, and that is that your very high rate of child death. And again, one of the ways that you go forward and tackle that is with children and young people themselves. So that is why when we looked at the high rate of death from road traffic accidents, that we are encouraging you to get your urban planners and your designers talking to children. In the children's session, some young people showed us videos of their journey to school, you know, and they were eye-opening for us to see, you know, what they faced. And they have a lot to say about their own life experience and, most importantly, the solutions, how they can change that. And the second area, of course, as we realize today, is your high suicide rate and the links to mental health. And actually, I don't have to say anything here because the young people who protested at the start have done a better job. They have shown that the point that I want to make is that we must link that to the wider structural issues that are causing poor mental health, including, you know, stress and lack of rest, which, of course, so I don't need to say anything, so thank you. You've saved me some work this morning. But the mental health issue does very strongly relate to my next area, and that is the area of education. And that is, of course, one of the, and I know that you know it, and I know that you're tackling it, and that is the area of the academic pressure and stress and long school hours. And it's not that you're not trying to do things, because it was very clear the government understands and wants to change this, particularly with Curriculum 19. But that what children are telling us is that school life is not changing, and that lots of schools are not actually complying. So there is one issue around enforcement that we need to know, how do we make sure that schools do it? And the government gave me a really significant and thoughtful answer, because of course it's not just enforcement. It's about a culture in society and parents' expectations, that parents want this, and how do you turn that round? And I think I encourage you in your efforts to try to change that, to show the harm that comes from very long school hours and stress and academic pressure. So I encourage you to keep that work done. And then really my final issue, and you will know that from our discussion, is the issue of protecting children from violence and abuse in school, and having a very strong, wide definition of abuse. It's not just physical abuse, it's not just psychological abuse, it's also just verbal abuse. And I think our message in the report is that there is no acceptable level of this. There is no acceptable level. The severity is irrelevant. If it happens at all, it should not. And there must be a very strong message from government that that is never acceptable for any staff in schools or sporting facilities to treat children that way, that dignity is the ultimate thing. And then finally, I commend you on your efforts on child rights education. That's really important, and I know that you're teaching it. We don't know whether children are really understanding it, and what I would encourage you to do there is think, it's not just teaching children about the rights in the convention. They must know how to claim those rights, and as Professor Navina said, it's really important that they have complaints mechanisms that they can use that are safe and confidential. And then my very last point, Navina is timing me. My very last point is that how do you get a really strong child rights education for your children? And the most effective way of educating children about their rights in school is to respect their rights in school, that they go to a school that is a rights-respecting environment. And that really needs a really good root and branch look at everything that schools do, policies and practice to ensure that they're rights respecting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lundy. I'd like to now turn to Dr. Nigel Cantwell for his brief presentation on the issues that he covered under this particular review process. All the mics are working.
Oh, okay. It is indeed new. Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody, and I can only reiterate what my colleagues have already said in terms of the pleasure and privilege we've had to be working with you all during this past week, and to thank you for the commitment you've all shown and for the information that you've and opinions that you provided us. I have essentially two blocks of issues to raise, which are reflected in the concluding observations. And the first one relates to alternative care for children. And it's, I think, really important to look at how, on the one hand, the authorities are effectively moving in the right direction, but at the same time recognizing the validity of the concerns being expressed by non-governmental organizations and children themselves who are involved with the alternative care system. So although the government has not yet developed a fully fledged strategy tailored to Taiwanese reality to phase out institutional care for children, in other words, the placement of children in large residential facilities, the government has certainly taken a positive step in that direction by adopting at the beginning of this year a national policy for the alternative care of children, which in fact I only saw in its detail during this current week. That policy document contains some laudable thrusts and strategic goals, including those directed at preventing family breakdown, which of course is essential, trying to ensure that alternative care is really only used when needed, and thus avoiding wherever possible recourse to alternative care placements, and in particular placements in residential facilities, because this is the area of particular concern that we have or that comes out in our concluding observations. So indeed, we have ongoing concerns. We expressed these concerns already in 2017 about the preponderance of recourse to residential care for children, and about the implications of the fact that the great majority of residential facilities are run by private providers. These implications are considerable and range from quality of care to ability of the state to monitor the operation of the facilities concerned, and the basic one of resources. How are private facilities resourced? Where do they get their resources from, over and above the subsidy that the government provides? But among other things, this situation of having a large proportion of residential care in private hands makes it far more difficult to implement an effective deinstitutionalization program or strategy, far more difficult than it would be, obviously, if facilities were in the hands directly of the state itself. And this constitutes a very real challenge, I think, for developing a deinstitutionalization strategy, and will really require a great deal of consultation and exchange with the private sector, as well as imposing a certain number of rules upon them. But on the positive side, we are particularly pleased to note that the government is working to make small group homes a statutory care setting, which I was surprised. I didn't realize it was not yet a statutory setting. So this is a very positive move, and a very necessary one, I think, and means that small group homes can be considered when a child is in need of residential care. The small group homes can be considered first to see if the child is best suited to that setting, and then we can go and look at the larger facilities. And the other aspect, which I see I must be extraordinarily bad at timekeeping. The other aspect that I wanted to mention is the question of identity, the child's identity. In recent times, throughout a large range of countries, there has been terrific advocacy on the part of, in particular, on the part of adoptees, donor-conceived children, and children born through surrogacy. Their advocacy has been brought to an international level in terms of their need to know their origins. And you will see in the concluding observations that we are particularly concerned about the need to improve the possibilities of those three and other categories, or children in other situations. We absolutely need to improve access to information on origins, which already means collection and preservation of data, sometimes re-establishing the identity because the identity has been falsified in certain situations, particularly of adoption, and the need to guide and support children, young people, or even adults, because often this process takes place when the person concerned is already in adulthood. The need to provide counselling because you don't know, they don't know, and we don't know what information they may find and how they will react to that information on their origins. I will leave it there. But I do want to note that in the past 5 years, this identity issue has really been demonstrated to be a fundamental rights problem. It's obviously covered in the convention, but in terms of the attention that it has received, that has been quite restricted so far. But the attention now is so great that we, in the past 2 years, an international NGO was created specifically on this topic. It's called Child Identity Protection, and I think it will probably be extremely beneficial both to that organization and to Taiwan that there be some contact so that the organization can provide Taiwan with elements of its experience in this sphere. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Cantwell, and the floor is for Dr. John Tobin to present his issues.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And can I start with saying thank you so much for having us this past week. I haven't travelled overseas for 5 years. I have 4 children back home and a wife who wanted to know why I was going, and this week has assured me that the efforts have been worthwhile. The contributions you've all made from government, NGOs and young people has demonstrated to me the value of a genuine rights-based approach. You have created a unique dialogue which I've not seen elsewhere in the world, of which you should all be very proud. So a huge thank you for inviting me, and as again I said, a privilege to be part of this opportunity. A special thanks to Mr. Lin, who I see as being a champion of children's rights. He was here last time, he's still here, and he's still championing the rights of children as well. Also a special mention to those young people today that took courage and bravery, so you should be very proud of your efforts, and also heed the call of Minister Lin to encourage more children to express their views from across a range of diverse backgrounds. I'll seek to address 4 broad concerns. My first concerns the rights of children with a disability. It is very clear to us that Taiwan treats the rights of people with a disability very seriously, and significant measures have been undertaken, and there is a genuine commitment to those rights in the National Human Rights Action Plan. But more is required. The first is a genuine commitment to allocate the resources required to ensure that children with disability and their families receive adequate resources to ensure their full participation in society. I would also encourage Taiwan to start to move from what we call a biomedical approach to disability to a social and rights-based approach. This approach grounds all responses to disability in the rights of the individual and identifies the structural conditions that often impede the ability of a child with a disability to participate fully in society. The aim is to ensure that you have genuine, effective, inclusive education, that all children with disability have access to recreation, leisure and cultural activities. There is no question that that is an aim you have. It's now committing to the process to realise that aim. And part of that process requires a genuine commitment to develop effective systems to allow for the participation of children with disability in that process. That can be challenging and it will take time, but I have absolute confidence that you will commit to that process. My second area concerns sexual health. This was a significant topic of discussion last time and it remains a significant topic of conversation and discussion again. It's very clear again to us that there is a serious commitment by the Taiwanese government to ensure that children have access to sexual education and information about their reproductive health. It is also very clear to us from hearing from many NGOs, parent groups, and importantly children, that there are still large gaps in that program. So our recommendation is that perhaps it is now a time to review what you have been doing with you identifying how you can address those gaps. What we've done in the recommendations is outline what the terms of reference for that review might be. This, of course, is a choice for you, but our sense is that there's a genuine commitment to try and achieve effective education around sexual and reproductive health, but there needs to be more consultation and engagement with all relevant actors to ensure that that model is effective. We want to see a reduction in sexually transmitted diseases. We want to see a reduction in teenage pregnancies. We also want to see young people enjoy their right to sexual and reproductive health, which is a challenge, but one that I have full confidence Taiwanese society will embark upon. And importantly, we have to engage children in that process for it to be effective. The third topic, as my colleague Professor Lundy mentioned, is mental health. In some respects, this process has demonstrated that in many ways we up here are redundant because you already know what the issues are. And what this process has done is provide an avenue for you to, and the young people to raise those issues for government to take into account. So I applaud the young people for raising their concerns about mental health because it's also a serious concern for us as well. And we have recommendations that are designed to address that concern. And I think it's a serious challenge, but again, if we work collaboratively with young people, with medical professionals, and with government policymakers, there is every prospect that those high suicide rates and all the issues confronting young people, not just suicide, but mental health issues below that in terms of impact, will start to be addressed seriously in the next 5 years. This is a challenge around the world. We understand and provide effective physical health services for children, but we are struggling sometimes to understand how to provide effective mental health services for young people. It is the same in my own country. So I'd encourage you to work with your young people to work out what their issues and challenges are, how to address those structural causes that are contributing to mental health, and develop effective measures to address those issues. And then lastly, the challenge confronting all of us is climate change and the environment. Many young people express their concerns around the impact of climate change and their concerns about the environment in Taiwan. This is a global movement led by young people. I would encourage again Taiwan to embrace this movement, to support your young people in identifying how they can play an active role in addressing the impact of the environment on their health and the broader society, and of course, the ongoing impact of climate change. So thank you once again, congratulations, and I wish you all the best endeavours in the next 5 years. I have no doubt that you'll make enormous strides as you have done over the past 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I now give the floor to Jacob Egbert Doek. He seems to be around here, and I give him the floor. I am going to present some brief information about economic exploitation, also commonly known as child labor, on juvenile justice or child justice, and drug abuse and sexual exploitation of children, starting with Article 32 of the Convention on Economic Exploitation. As I said, commonly associated with child labor, but I like to underscore the fact that economic exploitation of children is not only the exploitation of working children, but working children are under the conventions of the ILO, and the government of Taiwan decided to set the minimum age for admission to employment or work at 15, in full compliance with the ILO Convention 138 on the minimum age. So, indicating that the government of Taiwan is paying attention and adequate attention to other important relevant treaties for children than the CRC. That particular ILO convention allows an exception to that rule of 15 and allows light work performed by children 13 or 14 years old. The government of Taiwan provided us with information, statistics in particular, on work by children below the age of 6, between 6 and 11, and 11 and 15. It may be obvious that that particular practice seems to be not in line with the rules of that particular ILO Convention 138. It's not very clear what those children under 6, under 11, and 11 and older are doing, actually. There has been a reference of the government to TV programs, to entertainment, advertisement. But it is clear that the recommendation is that the government of Taiwan takes measures to be in full compliance with the ILO 138 that specifies which type of work can be done by children 13 and 14 years old. The juvenile justice, an area where the government of Taiwan has done very good things to make sure that children who are alleged of having committed an offense are treated in the best possible way and not in the first place under the criminal law. Again, there is an international standard, or there is a requirement, I would say, which between brackets, in Article 40 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, that the government of the state party should set a minimum age for criminal responsibility, meaning that children below that age should not be prosecuted and sentenced by a juvenile court for committing an offense. That minimum age is 14 in Taiwan, and perfectly in line with the recent recommendation of the Committee on the Rights of the Child in its General Comment number 24 on children's rights in the child justice system. So that was issued in September 2019, and the government did not wait for that particular document because it was set before that. Now, the key question in the discussion with any country that ratified the convention is, and how are you treating the children below that age of 14 who commit an offense? Because the idea that children below the age of 14 don't commit offenses is, of course, a serious mistake. So the government has decided to develop all kinds of protective, child protection approaches, I would call it, when a child under the age of 14 is committing an offense. And there is a wide variety of possibilities that is available and can be pursued in dealing with the children below the age of 14. There is one particular puzzle, and that is that the Juvenile Delinquency Act creates a category of 12 to 18. And the juvenile court is in a position to decide on the approach that will be taken in relation to an offense committed by children in that age category. The problem here is that it means that 12 and 13-year-olds are not excluded from the possibility of ending up in a correctional facility. And through the criminal law approach, So the recommendation is, of course, clear. Amend the law such that children of 12 and 13-year-olds are not going through any particular child justice or, if you want, criminal law issue. Then drug abuse. Again, a very positive approach of the government of Taiwan. Don't criminalize drug users. Don't bring them to court for using it. And there are all kinds of services that are available for children, youth that are using drugs. The one puzzle is that in the law, the Delinquency Act, there is the possibility that, of course, the children engaged in the production, in the selling, and in the transporting of drugs are under the criminal law and treated as persons who committed a crime. The one point I want to make is that the reaction of the system is that those young people, usually young people, are brought to an imprisonment. The statistics the government provided, and I like to just acknowledge the fact that the government is very, very informative by the statistics that they provide. But the statistics tells us that those children are sent to prison and not with alternatives like diversion or a fine. So that's the one point to pay attention to. And the other is the children that are considered to be drug-addicted children are going, have a possibility to go through the criminal law system. Don't do that. All young people, children, that are drug users should be treated from the perspective of child protection, including the ones that are considered to be addicted. Finally, my last minutes, as I was told, are minutes that last longer than 60 seconds. So now on sexual exploitation and sexual abuse of children. It's a very important problem and a very important field of large-scale violation of rights of children. The government of Taiwan takes it very serious, undertakes all kinds of measures to prevent, but also to react to instances of sexual exploitation, sexual abuse. Important is that the government of Taiwan is in the process of incorporating the optional protocol on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography. By the way, the current terminology in that regard is, for child pornography in particular, child sexual abusive and child exploitative, sex exploitative images. And we recommend the government to undertake all necessary measures which are a matter of priority to incorporate the provisions of the optional protocol. There is a very important and very useful, in my view, document called the Guidelines for the Implementation of the OPSC. And if you look at that particular document, you will find not only the text, but also the recommendations of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. I give you one, and that is on the images, sexual abuses images that appear online of children, and sometimes of non-existing, but certainly abusive pictures of children. The recommendation in that regard of the government is establish by law the responsibility of ICT companies to block and remove child sexual abusive material hosted on their servers, and establish the responsibility of financial institutions to block and refuse financial transactions intended to pay for any of the offenses under the OPSC. And there are more of that particular very specific recommendations that I think the government of Taiwan should consider in terms of whether they want to have it included in their legislation or in their policy. So, dear friends in this room, because we are all friends when it comes to the implementation of children's rights, we are all committed to the implementation of children's rights, to promote the respect and implementation of children's rights. And it's really important that we continue to do that. There are, again, from time to time, some reluctance in a full compliance of the rights of children, or trying to reduce the importance of respect for the rights of children or ignore that particular respect. So we are here, and as I said, you are left with a document that's a working document for the next 5 years. We hope to have another review of the third report of the government of Taiwan on the implementation and the progress that country made in the implementation of children's rights, including by following up the recommendations of the International Review Committee. So thank you very much for your presence in all those meetings, showing your interest in the implementation and your commitment to the implementation of children's rights. So the committee is confident that our recommendations will play a role in your activities to further pursue the implementation of children's rights. All the best, good luck, and take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give all the committee members another big round of applause. 再次谢谢所有的委员哦。All right, next for the handover of the report of concluding observations to the ROC Taiwan government, we'd like to invite all the members, and Minister Lin, would you please come to the front of the table? Yes? But before that, let me apologize on behalf of the organizer to you all for the noises that you've been hearing. They told us the room here is very much well soundproofed. Guess what? All right, okay. So please bear with us. 那不好意思哦，这个今天的这个场地呢，它隔音比较差一点。如果造成任何不适或者是干扰的话呢，要请各位贵宾多多的包涵。那接下来呢，我们请所有的委员还有林政委到这个舞台的前方哦。接下来呢是我们的结论性意见的报告递交仪式。All right? Okay. And for that, please take your mask off. Yes. For the handover ceremony. Thank you. Yes. All right, so Professor Doak, would you please hand the report of concluding observations on behalf of the review committee to Minister Lin Wanyi on behalf of the ROC Taiwan government. 接下来呢，就有请我们审查委员会的主席正式的递交结论性意见报告给中华民国台湾政府代表林万亿政委 ，OK， let's have a photo together。我们试试一起掌声。那希望呢，台湾政府呢，在这个我们委员提出的意见之后呢，能够持续的改善而全。All right, 3, 2, 1. Yes, we are going to do another photo. Would you please remain on the stage? 接下来第二张，我们是也有请这一次政府机关代表团的副团长卫福部的李丽芬政务次长，以及承办这一次活动的卫福部社家署的简慧娟署长到台上来一起合照。We also like to welcome the Deputy Minister of Health and Welfare, Li Lifen, and also Director General of Social and Family Affairs Administration, Ministry of Health and Welfare, 简慧娟。To the stage， 我们试试把这个道具板递给我们台上的贵宾好吗 All right. We also have some signs for you, yeah? Yeah, upside down. Oh, yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Please look at the cameras in front of you. Yes, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. Thank you. 我们再次给台上的委员、政委、次长、署长一个掌声。And you may return to your seats right now. Next, we're going to move on to the QA. 那接下来呢，是我们现场的这个媒体以及非政府组织代表提问的时间哦。那么跟各位现场的贵宾稍微讲解一下下。Yeah, just to make sure that the QA can be conducted in a very smooth and orderly fashion. Can we all agree that we'll take questions by rounds? Yeah, we'll take 5 questions each round. All right. 那我们接下来的 QA 呢，为了让我们尽量大家都可以有机会提问哦，我们是依照这个梯次，一梯次我们可以接受5个问题。那提问我们是按照这个举手的这个先后次序。那5个问题呢，问完之后我们就请台上的这个委员或者是政委来回答。那因为这个时间的关系哦，请各位贵宾尽量将这个问题呢，控制在2分钟以内。那举手之后呢，等我们的工作人员把麦克风递给您，然后稍微介绍一下您所属的单位、大名以及您自己哦，谢谢。Okay, please limit the length of your question to 2 minutes and identify yourself before you ask questions. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, so do we have questions? For now, 好，我们这边有一题。还有吗？这边一题哦，我们有这个号码牌，不好意思哦，所以这边第1题，然后我们右边这边也有一位是第2题，我们把这个2号，后方有第3位，3，然后前面这边有4，第4位，然后第5位在这里。好，我们第一个梯次就到这里。Yeah, so we have collected 5 questions so far. We are going to let them ask questions by turn.
好，目前
Currently, in the Civil Code, Article 108, parents still have the right to give discipline in court proceedings. Well, in fact, it means that the parents still have the right to give corporal punishment to children. So in the past several years, we see that parents may use their hands or belt to whip the children, and the courts believe that the parents have the right to give discipline and therefore don't think parents have violated the law. So my question to the RC member is that, do you think the right to give discipline in our law should be abolished? What's your recommendation? I'm from the Humanistic Education Foundation. Hello, I'm from the Mother's Shield Alliance. I think earlier the Youth Alliance was very brave. They spoke up their mind at the beginning of this session. We may not agree with them totally, but we admire how brave they are. And of course, adults need to review what we do when parents do something wrong. We need to recognize that and respond to children in a better way, and there should be more channels for children to submit complaints and their opinions. So these are my opinions. And then third for me, well, our alliance has brought 8 children participants to participate in the proceedings in the past week. One of the children said that in the conference room, he thought that this is a huge congress of complaint. So I think it's not a very friendly environment to implement CRC. As a parent, as a mother, we don't want this is how children express their opinions. We hope that the government can do more so that when promoting CRC, we attach importance to the importance of children understanding CRC and the supports given by parents. Hello. I am from the Women and Children's Rights Alliance from Taiwan. I want to say something, maybe not regarding the content of concluding observations, but still I want to express what I thought, because there was very little time for NGOs to say what we wanted compared to last time. So I want to use this opportunity to tell the government the following things. Well, first, during the sessions, we discuss anti-discrimination law, or there should be a law, as you mentioned, should be created to ban bullying. Our concern is that the definition for discrimination is pretty vague. And we have concern about the impartial enforcement of law. We think it's quite questionable. And moral and ethical education for children has not been improved. That's another concern of ours. So if we use legislation to ban something, it doesn't help improve the literacy and the education for children. And second, on gay couple adoption, we want the government to uphold best interests of child, to forbid reverse discrimination, which is yet another form of discrimination. Third, opening up games or competition for transgender population. I think on such major issues, the government did a very poor job on coordination. I want to apologize to children that it seems that I am also complaining. And please open up the discussions. Hello, I am Wen Yingzuo. I want to supplement what we did at the beginning of the session by saying something. I think we'll agree that children should have a healthy and conducive environment. We need to be able to have a positive environment to develop. Sometimes the government is not able to catch us. Why did I say that? Because after one minister, Li, said that if you go to the Taipei station, where there are a lot of crime schools, one senior high school student jumped off from a building to commit suicide because of academic pressure. Again, ironically, I think this is not because the buildings are too high, but too much pressure, too much expectation from the parents and from the school. So maybe the Ministry of Welfare and Health can respond to our proposals at the beginning of the session. And please respond to our questions proposed at the beginning of the session.
My name is Pei Jing Len. I'm an assistant professor in human rights. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you in particular for clarifying and emphasizing many important children's rights concepts, both throughout this week's constructive dialogue and in your concluding observations today. We know that such concepts can appear quite abstract on paper and can also be hard to grasp in practice, but are really at the core of implementing the rights of children. I believe your clarifications will be vital for building a better understanding of how the entire spirit of the CRC can be implemented in Taiwan. I also wanted to thank you for acknowledging that a lot of effort has been put into this review by our government officials, NGOs, and children in particular. It's been a very rich and valuable week for me personally, and I look forward to meeting you again in 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now over to Professor Duc and Minister Lin. 接下来交给主席。
First, the question on corporal punishment.
The
provision in the civil code. Dr. Vukovic is going to respond to that particular question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much for your question. The answer is no. Children, such provision cannot stay in the law. Actually, it has to be changed. And there must be a provision, and this is in our concluding observations, and that was also reflected in our dialogue. So in accordance with the general comments number 8 and number 13, there is a clear definition of what is violence and what should never be used against children, no matter whether it comes from family or whether it comes from a teacher or in a community. So no form of physical, emotional, or other type of violence is allowed and should never be allowed by law. The fact that we are going to fight that for decades to come in practice, that's another thing, but at least it should be strictly forbidden by law. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vukovic.
Regarding some questions raised by children on students' suicide, yes, according to our statistics, students commit suicide for several reasons, and the first top reason is pressure, academic pressure or other kinds of pressure. The second cause is emotional or relationships. Students are not able to release their emotions and therefore choose this path. And the third is family conflicts between children and parents. And the fourth is peer violence or violence on campus or bullying on campus. In some cases, there are mental issues, including depression. These are causes are shown in the statistics. I think Mr. Shen, the head of the department's response on suicide was not accurate enough. So the ministry will ask him to clarify, because if he didn't clarify it enough on that date, he should do that again. In the future, as mentioned by ROC members, Ministry of Education and Ministry of Welfare and Health will continue to implement the 3-tier prevention of student suicide. And it is also part of the strategies in the National Human Rights Action Plan regarding right to life. So we, the society, and the children should work together to prevent any possible suicide. The ROC members also mentioned another cause of death, which is traffic accidents. Yes, according to stats, among children who are under 18, the number decreased from 1,400 to 1,100. And for children who are above 6 years old who die in traffic accidents, we do see more cases. And they are discussed in government meetings. We ask the Ministry of Transportation to improve hardware and software. For younger children, yes, they are more likely to be subject to abuse. For example, when they are neglected in the cars, parents forgot to check the children, or the safety seats is not used properly, or when children do not wear helmets, and so on, are all issues. We are aware of that. We will input more resources, make more efforts in decreasing children mortality. On diseases, the Ministry of health and welfare. We want to improve medical services for children to prevent and to cure diseases so that they can receive the best medical attention and therefore to reduce children mortality. So this is to respond to our children and to let everyone know that the government will continue to do more.
My assumption is that there were a couple of observations and concerns expressed, not specific questions, but I'd like to respond to one observation on the child-friendliness of this kind of meetings for children. It is difficult to make a situation comfortable for all children present at and interested in what's happening in that particular meeting. And for meetings on children's rights, it should be our concern to make it as comfortable as possible for children so that they know that is what's happening is relevant for them. That's not easy, and it will not succeed all the time, but we should try to do that. It's the same challenge for the legal procedures. As I told before, if children go to a court that is an intimidating body, an intimidating building, an intimidating big room with persons in dresses and with something on their head, and they're going to decide. So it's in terms of making the situation comfortable for children. That is what we have to keep in mind all the time when we are in big gathering like this one that is about children and as much as possible with children and get their involvement as much as possible. In that regard, I would recommend the government, I forgot to say that, next time I also like to meet with working children below and above the age of 15. I think they should hear all as well, because their working conditions are not always up to the level they should be. So give them a voice in this particular review process.
All right, so now we're going to take another round of questions. 那接下来呢，我们再开放第二个梯次的提问。好，这边我们试试号码牌，准备一下。这边有1题、2题，还有后面这位同学第3题。这边第4题跟第5题。然后我们后面那位先生，我们就下一轮好吗？不好意思。1、2、3，然后4、5。
Good morning. I speak on behalf of the Child's Welfare League. I'm also a member on the Child Rights Group. Thank you for spending the whole week here, reading so many reports, giving us recommendations in the concluding observations. Thank you. And I think back to the Child Rights Group at the Executive Yuan, we meet every 3 months. And at each meeting, we can only discuss 3 items. So we are keen to uphold children's rights. Maybe we can have a more efficient way to address all the recommendations. Secondly, on mental health, children already said that they made many proposals at the central and local government levels. But under the pandemic, aside from mental health counseling services, I think there should be access to online counseling services. Of course, we don't want them to have problems and they have to seek help, but if they do, I hope there are such online access for them. And also Professor Kentwell talked about identity, and I have a question. in Taiwan, we are now amending the Artificial Reproduction Act. There used to be a lot of anonymous donors. And now, if you, as a child conceived with donor eggs or sperm, if you want to find out your own origins, you can only find out information that involves anonymous donors at best. So how can we ensure these children's right to know about their origins under that circumstances? Good morning. I have a few observations and questions. First, the international review this year is similar to last time, 5 years ago. So basically, I am the Children's Covenant Watch member. We represent 36 organizations, but we were given only 6 minutes when we present our ideas. So for each individual group, they have 3 minutes each. But we have 36 groups. We only have 6 minutes. There are so many issues we would like to present to you. I don't think the parallel report is enough. There should be more opportunity for us to engage in interactive dialogue. So I wonder, in other countries, when you have a chance to talk to NGOs, how much time is allocated for such dialogue? Road safety, traffic accidents, as Professor Lundy mentioned, with Taiwan having less and less babies born each year, but we still have so many children dying from traffic accidents. However, Road Safety Committee meets only 6 months, every 6 months. As a result, the problems can never be addressed in a timely manner. In South Korea, they spent a very short span of time to reduce the deaths of children in traffic accidents by 96%, and children injured in traffic accidents also down by 69%. So we have such low birth rate. We cannot afford to lose any children in such car accidents anymore. I'm a senior student in senior high school. On mental health, I would like to highlight a few points. For example, throughout the review meeting, we try to highlight that teenagers or children commit suicide not because they suddenly had an impulse to do that. Therefore, I think at home, at schools, or on children's social media, you can maybe identify some clues why they would commit suicide. And very often, the hotlines, helplines, these resources are there in a very passive way. And I think the government should do more to destigmatize mental disorders. And in some group therapy sessions, we also have to highlight the importance of counseling specifically for children. Also, on privacy and the children's right on the internet, I think still children's rights are not fully respected or upheld. And I know that in your concluding observations, you talk about the comprehensive action plan for children's rights. I would like to know the experience in other countries' experience. Because there are so many groups whose rights must be upheld. How do we highlight the importance of upholding children's rights? I would like to talk about the educational resources for children in placement. Because for children in emergency placement. Sometimes they do not have access to education. And also in placement institutions, they do not have access to mobile phones. So on the one hand, we want to protect children, so we put them in placement. But when they are in placement, their right to education is deprived. Also, on juvenile justice, right now the juvenile court deals with children who commit an offense. How about the child who is a plaintiff in a proceedings? Again, they may face very unfriendly environment in the court as well. Of course, for sexual abuse cases, basically the proceedings will proceed behind closed doors, so there will be better protection of privacy. But for other proceedings involving children as plaintiffs or victims, sometimes the privacy of the children in the courthouse is not properly protected. So, two issues: your advice on how to ensure children's right to education, and secondly, child plaintiffs, how do we make sure the court is friendly to them? Good morning. I speak on behalf of the National Parents Association, Chen Jiajia. I want to talk about road safety. I think the death in traffic accidents is simply too much. In fact, when pregnant women go to the hospital for a checkup, basically additional information can be provided for the for the mother to be. For example, safety seat must be installed in the car. And also, before they leave the hospital with the newborn baby, the nurse can go down to the first floor, accompanying the new parents, showing them how to install the safety seat in the car. One of our legislators also said that it's not common for Taiwan parents to install safety seats in their cars. And sometimes they don't know how to use that safely or accurately. Actually, such education can be provided at the health setting on traffic to schools. Again, according to our relevant laws, we can have professionals serving as a guide on the road to make sure the traffic is smooth so that the children can walk safely. So we can provide training for these volunteers, for example.
Thank you very much for all those questions, and we go and try to answer those questions. The first was on the mental health issue, the child rights group of the Executive Yuan. You want to go, Laura? And John?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the point you make is that your insights demonstrate the need for this ongoing conversation between government and civil society and parents and children about what forms of mental health services are effective. So COVID was a curse for all of us, but one thing it did provide was the ability to provide online services for health, which was a remarkable achievement. And in many respects, that's often easier for young people because they can access those services in the comfort of their home, and particularly around issues concerning mental health. It may increase their privacy. So what I would be saying to you is that conversation you are having at the local level and with central governments needs to then develop appropriate services for children in your areas, which then get the support from your central government as well. So it's this constant conversation and dialogue between children, medical professionals, and service providers about what can actually allow for children to have access to not just services but preventative measures, which is the point that's been stressed over and over again, If a child is taking their life, we have acted too late. There are so many signals and signs that will invariably arise where we have to provide proactive services for young children. So rather than waiting till something's wrong, letting them know about the availability of services to encourage them. Sometimes, I'm not sure in Taiwan, but there is stigma that children think when they see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. We have to change that stigma. We have to encourage children to say it's actually okay and important to seek help when you need help, to avoid situations that lead to the really dire outcomes we've talked about. So I would just encourage you that when developing appropriate mental health services, it's about recognising all the possibilities that exist and then working out through trial and error, through piloting, what actually works for your children in what parts of the world. But being proactive is really critical. As I said, in my own country, we haven't done this very well. We're recognising the same dilemma, and we are now providing specialist health services for young people to address their mental health concerns with significant budgetary support. You have to have appropriately trained personnel, which means educating adolescent and young persons, psychiatrists and psychologists to provide those services. But I would agree, and I would encourage you to have that conversation internally about how to provide those services.
Thank you, John. Dr. Cantwell, on identity, please.
Yes, thank you. In relation to the amendment of the Assisted Reproduction Technologies Act, it's clear that in every country where donor-conceived children are present, or rather where donor conception methods are used, they have gone, or they began through anonymous donorship and are gradually moving, in most cases, towards, at the very least, the provision of non-identifying information about the donor. In other words, obviously, particularly, I would say, on health, the health status of the donor, but more and more are moving towards situations where donors can be identified, not retroactively, but as a condition of providing gametes to have to disclose their identity, which could be passed on to the donor-conceived child on request, and after checking, probably, it depends on the country, but after checking again with the donor if he or she is in agreement. So there is no standard practice, and obviously this is not something that was explicitly covered in the convention, because at that time ART was not a phenomenon, if you wish, or not a widespread practice. But the tendency is definitely towards ensuring the best possible access of donor-conceived children to information about the donors.
Thank you, Dr. Cantwell. The next question was on a very practical one on the participation of NGOs. Groups of NGOs do receive the same minutes to present their views than separate NGOs. The policy of the Committee on the Rights of the Child is to encourage the NGOs of a country to present one comprehensive report that covers all the specific special interest of the NGOs. We don't want to have 40 reports from NGOs in Italy or 65 in Germany. That's practically impossible for the CRC committee. you can only participate in the pre-sessional meetings of the committee if you have submitted a piece of paper, a report. Otherwise, you will not be heard. The difference with the practice here is, of course, that the NGOs are on the spot actively involved in the review process by being given an opportunity to present their views and to also, in Monday morning and Monday afternoon, a real Q&A process. And that is uncomparable with the standard practice of the CRC committee. So this particular country has a level of involvement of NGOs and children and youth that is incomparable with the practice in Geneva and with the other countries. So that in the response to the second question, there is the issue that the senior student raised. You want to respond to that, Minister?
首先回应欧盟。
To respond to the Children's Welfare League Foundation meeting before October 31st decides that the follow-up with concluding observations will be a ad hoc project. So this project is separate to the routine work of the Executive Yuan Children's Rights Group. It's not just a one-day or two-day meeting. We will have conversations with NGOs, collect their opinions, and I myself will convene and host a inter-ministerial meeting. So we will organize multiple sessions to respond to the concluding observations given by the IRC. Second, I want to talk about students in placement institutions. Is their right to education hampered? The answer is no, because according to the National Education Act, as long as students are within the age brackets who should receive education, national education, they will receive such education. Maybe some of them are stigmatized, but we will ask the MOE to do more to forbid that kind of discrimination or stigma. And you also talk about other things on mental health. I remember that I asked the MOE to include mental health rest days into sick days. But instead of using the wording sick days, better terms should probably be used. I cannot remember exactly what the terms are, but I asked the MOE to provide such rest days or leave days. And I ask our ministries and agencies to respond to the concluding observations. Okay, and it was also mentioned that the resources for mental health services are not enough. We will deal with that. As for juveniles injustice, yes, we will ask the Judicial Yuan to have more discussions. What the student said, of course, makes sense. And we read the idea of bunk house in the concluding observations. We can call it a kind of children's house. And in 2017, that was a major project promoted by EU. When children are witnesses of violence or victims, then different professionals who want to conduct interviews or assessments should go to the children's house. I think this issue was talked about in our meeting a couple of days ago. Ministry of Health and Welfare will discuss whether or not some institutions in Taiwan can transform into children's house. that judges, social workers, medical service providers can go there. And that environment is friendly, is warm. This is the first time we see this observation. It wasn't in the concluding observations 5 years ago, but when I saw this last night, I am very excited, and we will go toward this direction too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. There is one question left on privacy. The rule or the recommendation, it's not explicitly in the convention, but the recommendation in the general comments on child justice in children's rights in the child justice system, the rule is that sessions of a juvenile court where young offenders are tried by the court are closed-door meetings. Family cases are, at least in my country, behind closed doors. The one issue is that criminal law requires, at least in the European Treaty on Human Rights and Freedoms, that they are public, so the rule for the children is an exception, and the one issue that has to be covered is the availability of the sentence that has been issued by the juvenile court, and the rule in my country at least is that that is a decision that is where the name of the child is deleted from the text so that you cannot find the child.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're actually running out of time here. Is it okay that we let the gentleman in the back who didn't ask the last question in the previous round, give us the last question? 那不好意思，时间的关系哦，那我们让上一轮没有问到的最后那边的，他上一轮举手了，不好意思，那我们接下来可能就不接受问题了。我们请上一轮的这一位先生帮我们问最后一个问题。
最后是压轴了哈。
Well, I do feel the pressure to give the last question. On the second day, so where are you from? I'm from the Fushen Care Association. Minister Lin, dear ROC members, good morning. I saw many government delegates show up on the second day of the review. It means that the government attaches great importance to it. I hope that they don't feel that they are required to be here because their supervisors ask them to be here. I hope that the government will walk their talk. So, Minister Lin, I want to speak on behalf of a child. A child was here, and he wanted to ask for a leave for public affairs in the school, and the school doesn't allow it. The school asks the children to take a personal business leave. So I think the schools need to become more aware of CRC. All right, talking about children refugees, I want to ask about whether the government prioritize children immigration and children refugees. About 3 billion people have escaped from Ukraine due to the wars, and about 1.4 million are children. In the future, if there is war on Taiwan, since Taiwan is an island, has the government devised any policies to protect or to place children? Or does the international CRC or other conventions consider the issue of children refugees, especially in wars? I think 2 days ago, some children participants pointed out that on the last Children's Rights Group meeting on October 31st, there was a proposal or there was a discussion about armed conflict. Is the National Defense Manual in Taiwan eligible, readable, and understandable for children? And whether we need to start devising supplementary measures. I think the representatives from National Defense were present, showing that they care about this issue. And a couple of months ago, there was a national meeting on hazard prevention. We discussed that the wars bring the most impact on the vulnerable groups, including people with disabilities and the elderly. And there are some policies being discussed. And to respond to you, yes, the government is considering some supplementary measures.
Thank you very much, Minister, for this response, which is important given the fact that indeed a major international issue is the care for refugees, particularly children, but also others, and take care of their concerns and try to protect them in the best way possible. And that is definitely an issue currently in Europe for many countries, including my own country, the Netherlands. And it's really a kind of a situation in which a lot of children are losing their confidence, are uncertain about what will happen in the coming days or years. So it is an obligation of the international community, certainly under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, to make sure that we do the best to serve those children in their very specific situations that are really dramatic from time to time. Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, apparently there's a lot of work to be done ahead of us, and we'll continue to work with young people to further the rights and welfare of the child. And let's end the press conference today with another big round of applause to all the members of the International Committee and all of you who join us on site or online for the review meeting this week. 那么最后是以一个掌声再次谢谢我们的国际审查委员，也谢谢所有在现场或者是线上呢一同加入我们这个礼拜国际审查会议的好朋友们以及机关团体的代表。Thank you once again. Thank you. 再次谢谢，谢谢。All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you. 谢谢。那各位贵宾，我们在场外呢有准备餐盒哦。那请各位贵宾呢离场之前都可以凭识别证领取餐盒。那有借口译设备的贵宾提醒您要记得归还设备，谢谢。We have meal boxes ready outside. Please help yourselves and don't forget to return the headsets. Thank you very much, and we wish you a good day. 谢谢。